Hi, everyone. My name is Anda. Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar on Agile SAP in 7 steps. We have an exciting lineup of presenters who will share valuable insights. I will begin by introducing Steve Oken, who will go over a quick introduction. Steve, over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Anda, and welcome everybody. Thanks for attending this session. I'm very excited to share our content with you today. It's an exciting topic, and of course, we've recently announced our free version of the Agile Scrum Board. So we're going to talk about the Agile Scrum Board, but we're going to talk about it in the context of how you use a Scrum Board to help you to manage your SAP implementation projects. And we're going to cover the major features of an implementation project, including how you would do requirements management, how you deal with business process design, sprint planning, handling SAP customizations, and integration testing, just to name a few of those subjects. And we'll cover those in our discussion today. I'm going to share briefly just an overview of CoreALM, who we are, to give you some background. And then I'll turn it over to our presenters who will walk us through the topics for today. So hopefully you can see my screen. This is just an overview of CoreALM, who we are. It talks about the fact that we manage solutions for SAP Solution Manager as well as SAP Cloud ALM. The history of the company, we started about 13 years ago when our founder and CEO, Labinot Batucci, who used to work as the head of the application lifecycle management practice at SAP, left to start CoreALM because he saw a lot of demand in this space, and that's when he was basically serving customers across all of these SAP solutions. At the time, it was SAP Solution Manager. And as you can see from the small selection of logos that we have at the bottom of the screen here, we served a lot of fairly sizable companies and large SAP customers. But it was about 2018 when he realized that there was an opportunity to actually standardize some of the solutions because we were reproducing a lot of integrations for customers every single time. And so it made sense to productize those so they could become available for a lot of our customers. And what we realized is that those companies that are running SAP don't just run SAP, they also have other non-SAP applications that they need to manage. And for those other non-SAP applications, they use other tools like Jira, Azure DevOps, ServiceNow. So we do provide connectivity to those additional tools, and that's what the innovation was. It started in 2018, is building those connectors. On top of that, we build add-ons, which I'm going to talk about the Scrum Board today, which is an add-on to Solution Manager, and it gives you that full capability to be able to manage from a Scrum Board in an agile way your big SAP implementation project, and it ties into SAP Solution Manager Focus Build as well as SAP Cloud ALM. Okay, so that's a brief history in terms of who we are, and I'm excited to get going with the presentation today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panel, who's going to walk us through a bit of a demonstration and give you an overview on how you can enhance your projects to make them a little bit more agile and get better outcomes. And that's what we've experienced with our customers. I do love to hear questions and problems coming from our customers. So if you could take the time to put your questions in the chat, we'll do everything we can to address those questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for taking your time today. I know that you've got a lot on your plate. But thanks, and I'll turn it over to Baldwin to carry the demo forward. Thank you. Baldwin?
Thank you, Steve, for the introduction. And just a second, I'll start sharing my screen, and then we'll get started.
Perfect.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. My name is Valdrin Spahia, one of the SAP Solution Manager and ALM Architects with CoreALM. And we're going to start today by primarily going through some of the main tools that SAP provides in order for you to be able to deliver SAP projects. This includes any type of transformation, greenfield or brownfield implementations. Now, in addition to that, we'll also go into the Scrum Board and some of the additional tools that complement Focus Build in order to deliver these projects mainly in an agile fashion, let's say. So a brief introduction to Focus Build if you're not familiar with the tool. This is an add-on to SAP Solution Manager, and it primarily helps customers to deliver projects for SAP and non-SAP. It also supports any solution such as on-prem, cloud, or hybrid. So in any case, if you have any type of cloud solutions, or if you're in a hybrid scenario, both of those can be supported by Focus Build. It also integrates with other tools. So an example is if you have additional tools for non-SAP projects, or if you're using those tools for SAP projects, you could integrate into Jira, into Azure DevOps, into ServiceNow, and etc., just depending on the third-party solution that you have from a non-SAP perspective. Primarily, the goal would be to have all of these different tools under one umbrella, which would be SAP Solution Manager and the Scrum Board to complement that. Now, primarily within Focus Build, it will give you the ability to primarily manage the entire, for example, project. So this would be from capturing requirements, so anything from scoping the requirements, including the solution, designing the solution as well, which will provide you different tools such as where you can manage a complete business process hierarchy, including having process diagrams or process flows within that solution, so that way you can build a scope. And also, in addition to that, it will give you the capabilities for you to be able to capture requirements and also capture deliverables in order for you to be able to deliver those requirements. And then as you get further down the path of delivering and building, you'll have the ability to have manual and automated test cases within SAP Solution Manager. But in addition to that, there's also some more capabilities around test planning, also test data management, and impact change analysis as well. Now, on the important part of deploy is that it also will give you capabilities of completely managing the transports for the project, including any type of change traceability and retrofit, for example, if you have multiple projects and maintenance in the same path. Now, to talk a little bit about a active methodology with SAP Solution Manager and Focus Build. So depending where you are in the project, but if you intend to, for example, utilize the best practices or any type of model company from SAP, ideally this is where you would start within your prepare phase to determine and identify what is the scope of the project that you plan to implement. This will kind of give you an idea of the estimation of scope, resources, and etc. that you will need in order for you to deliver the project. Also will help you with different type of decisions in order for you to implement, and then how much customization you will require as well. So once you have that initial roadmap, ideally this is where you will start capturing requirements, which will be primarily between your prepare and your explore phase. And the goal would be for you to be able to build these requirements, go through a solution validation, and then at some point try to determine that backlog that you are going to deliver and how many releases you intend to deliver per that for that scope. Now, in this case, as we go down the line within the realize phase, ideally with what we'll show you today is that from a sprint planning perspective, we'll determine the requirements that you are going to deliver even in a certain sprint. But before you get into this realize phase, the goal would be to have an entire backlog of the scope requirements and all of the deliverables such as technical and functional that you will deliver as part of your realize phase. And now as you go further down the line, of delivering these requirements. We'll get into any type of testing, not just integration testing. So if you have any type of functional, technical, and then integration and acceptance testing, all of that will also can be completed within SAP Solution Manager. And then further, when we are ready to deploy into a productive environment or cut over into production, this is where we'll primarily would utilize Solution Manager change control to manage all of the transports and non-transportable items that will go into a productive environment as part of your cutover. Also, what's very important, Solution Manager will also provide capabilities as you get into your hypercare mode, where, for example, if you have multiple landscapes to maintain, it will also help you with maintaining those changes, defects, and also still supporting your operations with different monitoring tools in order for you to be able to maintain and sustain the new changes that you have cut over into the productive environment. Last but not least, run stage primarily is where you would monitor all of your processes that you have productive after the project. And this Solution Manager with Focus Build does offer many capabilities on the monitoring side, which could be anywhere from technical monitoring to business process monitoring as well, in case any processes fail at any given time. From a architecture overview perspective, and how this fits within the Activate methodology, is in Focus Build, you primarily have a simple capability, which is process management. This is where you will manage all of your business processes, including any type of design documentation, test cases, and process flows. So this is where your business process hierarchy will live, for example, and the scope for a specific release that you are going to deliver. As part of that approved scope, the goal would be to capture any type of requirements, which would be, for an example, any type of development or specific configuration requirements that you will deliver as part of that project. Let's say if that's SAP or non-SAP. The goal would be that we will break down those requirements into multiple work packages or one-to-one with the work packages in order for us to deliver that development or configuration work as part of that release. You can also manage multiple releases within Focus Build as well. In addition to that, work items would be the lowest level of deliverables for a specific team, for example. In this case, it could be anywhere from tasks, issues, development objects, configuration that the team will deliver. Now, the way this all ties together is that at any given time when we have these 3 items during the project, we could always generate, for example, a specific test plan for these when we get to that stage. So even if you are doing testing, for example, what we'll show you today in early stages of the project, so if it's any type of show and tell and so on, this way you could generate a test plan, you could get the results fairly simple because all of these items are pretty much tied together or integrated together with one another. Now, to discuss a bit about project management and sprint planning. So in SAP Solution Manager, with Focus Build, you'll have different waves and sprints that you could tie directly with all of these deliverables in here. So the goal will be to structure the project in such order where we'll have multiple waves, for example, for the project. In this case, each wave will contain some type of deliverable, not necessarily an entire release, but some type of deliverable that we can call it done. And then within that wave, we could have many sprints, for example. So in most cases, what we see 3 to 4 week sprints within SAP. The goal would be that we'll have at minimum 2 to 3 sprints within each wave. And this goal within each one of the sprints will have separate work items, let's say, that we'll assign to that sprint in order for us to be able to deliver those, build, test, and do a show and tell, and primarily park them until we are ready, for example, for that go live. Now, all of this information and deliverables that are added to Focus Build, everything will primarily be tracked within a solution readiness dashboard. So at any given time, if there is any type of changes in status, resources, dates, and etc., all of that information is also tracked within this readiness dashboard. Now, to give you a sample or an idea of, for example, how we would deliver a project using a scaled agile approach. So an example would be we would have, let's say, a simple two-wave project design where each one of the waves will have at minimum of 3 sprints each. The goal would be that after we have our scope and our requirements approved, is that for each one of the sprints, for example, for a 3 to 4 week sprint, we would have certain items. Let's say in this case, our goal will be to have development and configuration items that will be assigned to sprint 1. And the goal would be that we develop those items, we test them, and then we move on to the next sprint. But the entire idea is here that at the end of sprint 1, for example, we would do a show and tell for the entire sprint. And then we would do the same though for sprint 2 and sprint 3. So during that time, we'll also, because these items are marked as complete and we've already done a show and tell for each sprint, we'll execute a functional integration test in between SAP and also if any non-SAP applications are integrated with SAP. And then we'll have multiple iterations of functional integration testing as these items get completed. And then the goal would be at the end of this wave, we would execute a user acceptance test to make sure that the customer, for example, that's consuming these changes are accepting based on the requirements that they had in the beginning. Now, also, this user acceptance testing would equal a touch and feel. We would expect, for example, that the end user to go in the system and actually run an SAP transaction, let's say, for them to understand exactly that that was the requirement. Now, the similar approach would be, for example, for wave 2 as well. We will go through all of the 3 sprints. The most important part in here is depending if you're new to SAP or if you already have some changes in SAP, this is where primarily you would have some type of regression testing before we would deploy into a productive environment. Now, there's really 3 different deliverables within Focus Build that we're going to talk about within the screen. There's going to be a requirement. So an example is once we have our scope, so regardless if you are to use Solution Manager or not, for example, you would always have some type of scope or some type of business process hierarchy that you intend to change or something, a brand new processes that you are going to deliver. So the goal would be that we would have this in SAP Solution Manager where you would have a specific process that you are introducing or changing. You would capture a requirement directly within that business process. And in case, for example, we're making many changes to that process, we would create multiple requirements. If it's something simple where we say this requirement can be delivered, for example, within, let's say, a sprint or so, then in that case, we would only capture one. The goal would be that part of that requirement, we will break it down into a work package. And this work package is primarily to only capture the certain documentation, for example, such as a functional specification, or if you have other documentation, functional documentation that we want to capture for that requirement, we would load it directly within this work package. And then we would also design this work package in such an order that we would assign it to a specific wave that we want to deliver. Now, in many cases, these work packages could be, let's say, could have many deliverables. And if that is the case, for example, then we would create one or many work items for it. So an example could be if we have some type of custom development that we have to deliver, the goal would be that we would have a work item that delivers a custom development work assigned to the development team. And if there is any type of configuration in addition to that, we would also create a certain work item in order for us to deliver that configuration as well. The goal would be to have dependencies between these 2 items. And let's say if they are assigned to the same sprint or to a set or to different sprints, we would be able to deliver one, let's say in sprint 1 and the second in the sprint 2 in order for us to fully test that and do a show and tell before we mark that sprint complete. Now, to give you an introduction to our Agile Scrum Board, and how this can help and complement focus build. So the Scrum Board has many features and not necessarily just a board view, but it's an out-of-the-box solution that's deployed on SAP Solution Manager Focus Build, and it primarily will help you to manage I would say, the end-to-end delivery of an SAP project. So it will help you, for example, with any type of additional tasks maybe that focus build does not necessarily, you cannot customize or that you cannot have today. Or for example, if you wanted to have a board view such as this, or have different views such as list and see an entire traceability of these items for the end users, this would be the tool, for example, to use. Now, there's a couple of different versions of the Scrum Board that we have today. One of them is going to be a free version. This has some limited options. It's still very usable. The only limited options is that, for example, it does not allow you to change maybe every deliverable on there. So you're still able to view all of the items on the board. You're able to open the integration points, for example, between a requirement, work item, and also some of the decisions and risks that I will show you in the later slides, but you just will not be able to say, let's change them directly in there. You might have to go to Focus Build directly to change those items, but still great for a free version. The unlimited version, which is a paid version, will include primarily utilizing the Scrum Board to deliver your entire project without having the need to go for most of the features in Focus Build at all. Now within the Scrum Board, the requirements, you can manage pretty much your entire requirements in here. So some of the main features are, for example, you'll have a list of requirements, let's say that you create directly in Focus Build or in the Scrum Board, and then you're able to primarily associate these with different, for example, with different timelines that you want to, for example, deliver. In addition to that, there's also going to be some requirements, governance, and different approvals that you can have directly within the Scrum Board. Now, in addition to that, as you get further down the line with the requirements management, you're going to have what we call a backlog view in here, which primarily will show you where the requirement originated, for example, and then let's say what status is that requirement in, how many work packages it has assigned to it, how many work items, what are the actual process that we scoped at the beginning of the project. And in addition to that, it's also going to include all of the risks, any type of issues that we tracked during the project, and exactly where those are. So this gives you the capability, for example, to be able to export these metrics or even look at them within some of the reports that we have in the Scrum Board as well. Now, some additional features of the Scrum Board that are there. It's going to give you a view of all of the deliverables that are assigned to a specific sprint. In addition to that, it's going to allow you, for example, for any of the items in here, such as work items, to be able to move them from one sprint to another if they're required. It also is going to give you the exact status. For example, let's say that we get to a sprint review and then we have 20-30 items that are not necessarily completed by that sprint. You will be able to move them directly in the Scrum Board from one sprint to another to see what is your backlog going to look for the next sprint as well. Some of the board views, and so there's a couple of different views. There's going to be a board view and a list view in Scrum Board. So you're going to have a board view of all of the work items, any defect and defect corrections that you have created, let's say when we get into testing. And then there's also all of these additional items that you can create in addition to what Focus Build offers. So an example is, let's say if you want to break down a requirement, a work item, or a defect into smaller tasks, or if you have any type of decisions or any action items, issues, bugs, and test cases, you'll be able to create those directly within the Focus Build. And that will take me into my next slide in here. So an example is, we know that in most projects, for a specific deliverable, we'll have to create any type of additional decision points for it. Let's say if you are blocked for a specific item, we're able to create a blocker in here, specify why the blocker is there, and assign it to a user, and also have an actual timeline in there and a sprint. When does that blocker need to be resolved in order for us to be able to continue with our deliverable. In addition to that, you can have all of these additional action items for you to manage directly within the work item within Scrum Board. Now, what does this end up being? So within the Scrum Board, you'll have this traceability of all the deliverables. So let's take an example at the requirement level. You'll be able to track the requirement to see how many, for example, work packages, work items it has in a graphical view. And then in addition to that, if you wanted to see all of the tasks, for example, bugs and etc., defects and test cases, it will give you also this traceability matrix, and it will show you exactly where all of those items are. So something to think about with, for example, towards the end of the project, you'll be able to see the traceability of how many actual items, including risks, it took to deliver a specific requirement that they captured initially. Now, the custom tasks that can be created within a work item, for example, would be the defect, issues, risks, action items, blocks, and decisions as well. So these are all in addition to what the Focus Build solution will offer you. And all of these will be available within both the free version and the unlimited version of the Scrum Board. Okay. So now this was just a brief overview of the presentation. Now we're gonna switch gears, and I'm gonna pass the demo to my colleague Agile Sap, who's gonna walk you through a bit of the Focus Build and also how to manage an agile project with a Scrum Board. Thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you for the Valjan. Just if I could have you just confirm that you can hear me okay, and you can see my screen.
Yes, Harold, we can hear you and we can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you for the Valjan. As mentioned, my name is Agile Sap. I'm one of the other Focus Build and ALM architects here at CoreALM as well. And we'll show you so I'll walk you through the demo portion of today's webinar. We'll mainly stick to how the Scrum Board complements Focus Build. I will move from the Scrum Board to Focus Build to just kind of show you that one-to-one relationship that we have, but the majority of the demo will focus on the Scrum Board in itself. So what we're looking at here is the actual are all of the requirements that are captured as part of the release. So if you have a release, a project that you are undergoing through, and you're starting the requirements through deploy process as you're in those workshops, and you start capturing, the business is capturing those requirements, right? Those write-ups that they need for those Delta designs as part of the project. That you can actually, this will be one of the areas. This is one of the fields that you can actually use. You can import these. So if you already have a list, you can import all of these requirements, or you can actually just start creating them from the Scrum Board in itself. And then now that you've captured these requirements, you can actually even click inside of the requirements, and then you can see all of the information that's relevant to the business in itself. And then here you have a requirement number. So every time based on that one-to-one functionality that we have with Focus Build. So as you're creating a requirement in the Scrum Board, that requirement will translate into Focus Build in itself. So now that you have actually captured the requirements, the next thing would be, right, we would need that functionality, so we can group that functionality based on the work packages that we mentioned earlier. And this is where we would see, so we have some of those work packages that we've created ahead of time, just to save time for our demo purposes. So if we were to click into this work package that I initially have showing here in the Scrum Board, then it'll actually take me to that link in Focus Build. So we're actually in Focus Build right now, and all of that integration is showing currently. So then if the requirement, right, if that's the function, the work packages are a little bit too high of a level, there's additional deliverables that need to be captured as well. And so then we would actually break down these work packages into work items. So this is where you would start the requirements. You start you're starting thinking about how many on your release, which requirements will go in a certain release. And then as you start getting to a more granular level, you start thinking about, okay, you know, my release will have 12 weeks. For example, we'll have 3 sprints. Then you want to break down those requirements at a more, based on those deliverables at a more granular level. And this is where you would actually start breaking those down at a work item level. So let's say we have FSDs, development work that needs to happen, or even functional unit testing. This is where we start planning those at a more granular level, at a sprint level. So from the work packages, we've created work items, and then these work items are actually, if I go over into my next screen, will flow into the Scrum board in itself. So as we're transitioning from the explore to the build phase, and we have the entire bucket of requirements, we've broken those requirements down into the work items level. And this is where we can actually start planning our sprint. So for example, if you look at the very top here, we have the project, we have the release or the wave, and then this is broken down on the scope of work at the sprint level. So if I'm looking at here, this would be all of the work items, all the deliverables that are in scope for sprint, let's just call it for a particular sprint or sprint 1. Now, and then of course, looking at the very top here, we can actually see, we can track that work based on the statuses here. And on the right-hand side, we do have filtering options as well. So if you are, let's say if you're a Scrum Master and you're running your daily Scrum calls, you can actually use some of these customized filters to how you can write your daily call. If you have a specific team, you can pull up all of the work for that specific team. You can go into the details and capture that information, or you can look at it by priority as well. So we do have you do have that flexibility on and the functionality as well, to where it gives you that overall view as far as where you are sprint-wise, that bird's eye view, but also more granular as well if you want to look at it by teams. Then of course there's details here that will allow you to get a better understanding as far as where you are. You can have you have the owner sign here. You can actually see the statuses that you go into. You can the percentage completed as far as where you are for the sprint, start and end date, of course, and then you can also, if you need to add information or description or capture any comments, this is the Scrum board does give you that ability as well. And so as you're going through build, you're going through this through the sprint. You're running some of those events that happen throughout the sprint, whether this be the sprint scrum calls. Also, if you're having any scrum calls where you talk about some of those custom tasks that Valjean called out, such as issues. So this is where you can capture those as well. So if you have any key issues, blockers, or impediments, this is where you can capture those as well, and that will give you that ability to run your scrum or get an understanding as far as what areas are your problem, are you facing the biggest problems. And then of course those custom tasks do give you even more granular functionality. If you want to break down a work item, if it's maybe more of a high level, you want to capture it more at the task level. So if you want to become very granular, then you have, this is where the options that you have here, creating those custom tasks that will be associated with your work items. So now as you're and as Valjean mentioned as well, we do have the traceability as well. So if you, at any point throughout the project, you want to see where we are from an overall deliverable perspective, the traceability view would give you that functionality. So right as we're looking at here, we have the requirement, then we have the work packages that are associated with that requirement, the functionality, and then this relationship can be one-to-one or one-to-many. And then here we also have all of the work items, those deliverables, whether you're delivering functional spec, tech spec, or configuration work as well. And then, of course, you'd have the association to the process that you are delivering as part of the project scope. And then, of course, any testing that's associated with it. And then I'll go into testing a little bit more. I'll go into a little bit more of a detail in regards to the testing and what the functionality allows you. And so as you are going through the build, and also you want to see from, let me just go through this one that I have open here. So as you're going through the project and you're delivering, you're running through sprints, and of course, reporting is one of the things that, based on our knowledge, on our knowledge and also on our experience as well, it's great to have all of this information, but we do need, just having it here will not give you all the full understanding of the better picture. So reporting is another area where the Scrum Board can be very beneficial, because all of this information that's in here that we're tracking, based on whether it's statuses or the percentages, you want to know where you are. So if you're there's several reports that are actually associated that Scrum Board has. Some of these are out of the box, but some of these are, for example, like the overall progress review. So you can come in here if you want to know where we are from a requirement perspective, how many we have for this release or wave, and how many work items or deliverables we have, and where we are at any point in our project. But also there's also customized customized reporting that we have developed, and this is based off our experiences on some of the projects that we've been involved in, where the client just wanted a better overall view as far as where we are from a deliverables perspective. So the Scrum Board in itself will give you that reporting, whether you are a Scrum Master and you just want to look at the just at the sprint level, or if you are providing a higher level report to, let's say, the PMO or the project leadership. So as we're going through, we're going transitioning more from the build and from the deliverables, and we're coming into our testing part of the project. Then let me just actually refresh this. So as we're transitioning into the testing phase, then the Scrum Board in itself will one second, let me just go back. I just had to refresh the screen as it timed out. So as we're transitioning to the testing phase, then the Scrum Board, of course, does give you the functionality as well of creating test cases. And as you are executing those test cases, of course, then we do have, as you are executing test cases, and let's say you happen to come into some defects, then you can actually capture those defects as well. But if you just bear with me a moment, let me just go ahead and select all of the test cases here, so you can have an idea as far as how this will translate into the Scrum Board. And just bear with me a moment. So this is the board view that we have. I've selected all of the test cases. So this would be as I mentioned, as you're going through testing, you have all of the test cases that need to be tested, that the team is going through, and of course we can track all of the work by statuses that we have here. And then of course, as if I was to open one of the cards, that information that we need is here. So we'd have the test plan ID. Would have the text, the start date and end date, status, of course, priority, and anything that would be helpful to tracking that work. And as you can actually see from this icon here, this is a defect icon. So if I want to see all of the overall defects, I'll just click in here. But if I want to just see this specific defect that's associated with the work item, then this is where that would be. So if I hover over at the defect, on the defect, so let's say, for example, we have these defects that the team has called out, that has found as they're doing their test cases. then as they're going through the execution. So let's say, for example, we've created these defects. Let's say we'll take this 5. This is how we can actually track that work of the defects. So we do have statuses here. And as we're going through, as the team is going through fixing those defects, then we can move them through the statuses. And then, of course, if you do have, if you're running an Agile implementation workshop, ideally you also would want to have a defect call, just like you would have maybe a Scrum call. You would have a defect call where you're going over the statuses, and as where you can kind of manage it the same way that you do your Scrum call. You can run it based on team. So if you have a specific team, let's say you have a finance team or a conversion team that you can associate, you can run that session by. So you can look at all of the defects from the specific team, or based on the priority, which defects have a larger priority that are more important to your project. So you can run them either through the teams or on a priority basis. So, and then for the demo portion today, that is pretty much everything that I had prepared. So if there isn't, Steve, I'll pass it on to you. If you want to open up the session for some questions that we might have.
Absolutely, I will do that. And thank you very much for both of our presenters for covering all of this content today. Very interesting and engaging. I did get one question already in the chat. There's more, I think, coming through. The first question was, will I get a recording from this webinar? And we will. We'll be posting the recordings. We haven't been doing that in the past, but we're putting all of our content out on YouTube slowly. So we're going back to our archives and we're starting to post those out on YouTube. So we have more great content coming available on our YouTube channel. And we can send out an email with those links post the meeting. So you can expect to see the content available there. There's another question that came through. It was a question on dependencies. If I have tasks that, and this is something that I've encountered in the past as well, if I have tasks or work items where there's an interdependency between those work items, is there a way to indicate that somehow, or how does that get handled? Who wants to take that? Harold, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Hey, Steve, can you repeat that question? I don't see the question.
Oh, yeah.
Chat. I apologize.
Oh, it's okay, no problem. Questions just around dependencies. Is it possible to create an interrelationship between tasks in the Scrum Board for dependencies between work items?
So yeah, we can create dependencies. There's a dependency tracker. I don't know, Errol, you're still sharing. I wasn't sure if you're planning to show that, but there's a dependency tracker that you can relate items one to another.
Okay, great. Awesome. And do we find that people use the Scrum Board mostly for implementation projects? Is it possible to use it for managing your requirements backlog as well?
So primarily, both for implementation and any type of backlog. So far, the Scrum Board is built on Focus Build, on top of Focus Build, meaning that if Focus Build is utilized, which is primarily for implementation, then yes. But if somehow you're using Focus Build for operations, let's say, for example, then it would be possible to also use Focus Build. So it's a one-to-one with Focus Build.
Okay. And it seems like a lot of extra steps in terms of what you have to put into the system and track. So I would assume there's a corresponding payoff. What do we see for our customers in terms of, the benefits that they get from going through these extra steps to manage their deliverables?
in general, these steps that we've showed through the presentation and the demonstration during the project, I would say that you have to go through that motion regardless. In most cases, you'll end up using multiple tools, I would say. In this case, if you plan to use Focus Build and the Scrum Board, everything will be intact or within a one tool, regardless if it's the Scrum Board as well, because the information will be stored in SAP Solution Manager.
Perfect.
Hope
Okay,
that
great.
answers it.
It does, yeah, that's great. Okay, I don't see any other questions coming through. So I think we're gonna end it there. Thank you to our presenters. Thank you, Anda, for kicking us off. And thanks to all of you for joining us. We'd love to hear about interesting SAP challenges, both projects and operations. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions. And we will be sharing out the recordings, and we'll send you a link to that in the email. And thank you very much for attending.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.